You know, the greatest strategic failure in marketing is something called the silence illusion. It's this belief that quiet customers must be happy customers. But here's the thing, we're ignoring a simple neurological fact. By the time a user actually tells you they're leaving, they've been ghosting your brand for weeks, maybe even months. It's this massive blind spot that costs companies billions, not because of some big catastrophic failure, but because of a slow, almost invisible decay of engagement. So today, we're going to dismantle this illusion, piece by piece. We're going to uncover the hidden signals of churn and the psychological triggers you can use to win customers back before you even knew they were planning to go. This sentence right here, it has probably cost businesses billions of dollars. And it's such a comforting lie, isn't it? Because if you believe it, you don't have to do anything. You look at a dashboard, you see 0 support tickets, and you think, great, everything's fine. I mean, we've been taught our whole lives that no news is good news. But in today's subscription economy, that is a fatal assumption. Silence is not satisfaction. It's the sound of disengagement. It's the sound of a customer who has already mentally checked out and is just, quietly waiting for that renewal date to make it official. They haven't told you a thing, but their behavior has been screaming it for weeks. So, this really captures the huge mental shift we all have to make. We've got to move from this old, reactive way of thinking to a new, predictive reality. The old belief was simple. Quiet customers are happy. The new reality? No. Quiet customers are ghosting you. We used to think an empty support queue was the ultimate sign of success. Now we know that a lack of engagement is the #1 warning sign for churn. Think of it like a doctor, right? You wouldn't say a patient is healthy just because they haven't called to complain. You monitor their vital signs. This isn't about managing accounts anymore. It's about monitoring the vital signs of your customer's relationship with your product. Okay, so to get there, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by digging deeper into the silence illusion itself. Then we'll talk about the subscription crisis that made this all so urgent. Next, and this is the good part, we'll break down the 3 silent signals of churn. After that, we'll dive into the psychology of how to actually win customers back. We'll cover how to build your own system for this, and finally, we'll talk about what this all means for the future of churn itself. All right, let's really nail down this problem. The silence illusion is that dangerous blind spot we create by focusing only on what customers say, not what they do. It's this flawed belief that the cancellation email or that angry phone call is the moment of decision. It's not. That's just the final receipt for a decision that was made a long, long time ago. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. Churn isn't a single event, it's a process. It's a quiet, slow erosion of habit and of value. It starts with these tiny, almost unnoticeable changes. It starts when your app gets moved from the main screen to a folder on their phone. It gets worse when a user stops exploring new features and just sticks to the bare minimum. By the time they finally get around to telling you they want to leave, the enthusiastic yes they once gave you has already turned into a quiet, definite no. The decision is already made, you're just the last one to find out. So if this problem is so big, why are we only talking about it now? Well, this whole shift in thinking wasn't just some academic idea. It was forged in the fire of economic pressure. The need to listen for silence basically became a matter of corporate survival.
So around 2024, the SaaS purge became a very real thing. Companies were overloaded with subscriptions, and they started aggressively cutting any tool that wasn't deeply, deeply embedded in their daily workflow. Suddenly, investors stopped asking that old vanity question, so how many users do you have? And they started asking the real question, how much of last year's revenue did you keep? That's net revenue retention, or NRR. Basically, it just measures if your existing customers are sticking around and spending more or less over time. It became the ultimate sign of a healthy, sticky business. And the single metric, it forced a massive shift, moving the entire industry away from just reacting to problems and toward predicting them.
And this gives a name to the #1 enemy in this new world: vampire subscriptions. These are the tools that companies are paying for, but their users have totally forgotten they even exist. They just quietly suck money from the budget without providing any active, visible value. Now, on a spreadsheet, they might look like a perfectly healthy subscriber, but in reality, they are incredibly vulnerable. The second a budget review comes up, they are the first ones to get a stake driven right through the heart. So, this completely changed the game. The entire mission for growth had to pivot. It wasn't enough anymore to just acquire customers, to get them in the door. The new role was to make sure they stayed active, engaged, and became part of the very fabric of their work. Success was no longer about how many logos you had on your website, but about the depth of daily engagement inside those companies. Active became the new acquired. Okay, so this brings us to the really cool part, the core of the solution. If you have to keep users active, how do you actually know when they're starting to drift away? You can't just guess. You have to build a system to listen for the silence. You have to build what we call a Usage-Anomaly Sieve. I want you to think of the sieve like a multi-layered detection grid, like something out of a spy movie designed to protect a vault. It's not looking for one big loud alarm. It's this automated system that's constantly monitoring these subtle patterns in user behavior, sifting through millions of data points to find the faint early signals of churn. It's what lets you move from guessing to knowing so you can step in before the user has even consciously decided to leave. So the first layer of this sieve is what we call breath decay. I like to think of this as the feature gate. This is when a user stops using the advanced, high-value features of your product. The very features that probably made them buy it in the first place. They might still log in, they might do a few basic tasks, but their usage has become really shallow. They're not exploring anymore, they're basically retreating to the basics. And that's a crystal clear sign that your product's value is shrinking in their mind. The second silent signal is the frequency sink, or what I call the habit gate. This one's easy to spot. It's a measurable drop in how often they log in. For example, if a user who used to log in every single day is now only showing up once or twice a week, a critical habit has been broken. Your tool is no longer an essential automatic part of their workflow. It's been mentally downgraded from a must-have to a nice-to-have. And we all know what happens to nice-to-haves when budgets get tight. And the third signal, and honestly, this is often the most critical one, is admin silence. This is the champion gate. This is when the admin, the team lead, the person who fought to bring your tool in and probably holds the credit card, just stops engaging. They're not running reports, they're not adding new users, they're not checking the dashboards, they've gone dark. When your internal champion goes quiet, the renewal is in serious jeopardy. Now, here's where this gets really interesting, because we can get incredibly specific with the data. A 50% drop in weekly login frequency by a power user, that's not just a red flag. We call that a terminal signal. This is a 5-alarm fire. It demands an immediate, fully automated intervention. Not a week later, not even a day later. The moment the system detects that signal, the rescue has to begin. And what that intervention looks like is absolutely critical. It is not a generic, "we miss you" email with a 10% discount. That's just pleading from a position of weakness. The right response is what's called a resurrection loop, a proactive, automated message that injects new, specific value. It might be an email that says something like, "Hey, we noticed you haven't used our new AI reporting feature. Here's a 2-minute guide on how it can save you an hour a week by analyzing the data you already have." See the difference? It doesn't beg, it helps. It reminds them of the value and gives them a really compelling, low-effort reason to come back. So we know what signals to look for, and we know what kind of response to trigger. But to really master this, we have to go one level deeper. We need to understand the psychological principles that make these interventions so incredibly powerful. It's not just about what you say, it's about how the human brain is literally wired to respond. So why is a resurrection loop so much more effective than just offering a discount? Well, the answer lies in 2 really powerful quirks of human psychology that we can use to re-anchor a habit that's starting to fade. First up is this fascinating principle called the Zeigarnik Effect. You know that nagging, annoying feeling you get when you've left a task half finished? That's it. That's the Zeigarnik Effect. Our brains are hardwired to want closure. We crave completing things we've started. These unfinished tasks take up real estate in our minds, creating this little bit of tension that our brain just desperately wants to resolve. And this is how we can put it to work. Your automated system sees a user who started creating a report, or maybe began setting up a project, but never actually finished it. Your intervention doesn't just say, "Hey, come back." It sends a super specific message like, "You're just 1 click away from finishing that Q3 performance report for your boss." All of a sudden, you haven't interrupted their day. You've actually given them a clear path to that mental closure they've been craving. Your tool isn't a distraction anymore. It's the solution to that nagging, unfinished feeling. The second powerful principle is the endowment effect. This is our well-known tendency to overvalue things just because we own them, or because we've invested our time and effort into them. We feel the pain of losing something we already have way more than the pleasure of gaining something new. It's the reason we all have old clothes in our closet we never wear. We've given them value just by owning them. And this is just incredibly powerful for preventing churn. Think about it. Your customer has invested months, maybe years of their own data, their projects, their hard work into your platform. So your re-engagement message shouldn't be about your cool new features. It should be about their investment. By framing the conversation around preserving their work or protecting the asset they've built, You make leaving feel like a real, tangible, painful loss of their own progress. Staying isn't just a subscription payment anymore. It's an act of protecting their own investment. Okay, let's bring all this together into something practical. We've got the theory, we understand the psychology, so how do you actually build this system? Well, it really comes down to 4 key steps. First, you have to architect the signals. This is unique for every product. You have to sit down with your data and define the specific sequence of behaviors that means goodbye for your customers. Second, you engineer the rescue. This means you pre-write and test your intervention messages. They must always be about what the user can achieve, not about what you're about to lose. Third, automate the pivot. Timing is everything. The intervention has to be triggered the instant a signal is detected. Waiting is not an option. And finally, you have to measure velocity. The key metric for success here is simple. Does the at-risk user come back and re-engage within 7 days? If not, your message or your value just isn't strong enough. This quote right here is the philosophical heart of this entire framework. It's the critical shift from a mindset of desperation to one of empowerment. Please don't leave is a plea. Here is what you are about to achieve is a promise. One is about your needs as a business, the other is about their goals as a user. That is the essence of a value-first rescue. Ultimately, this whole thing is about a fundamental shift in your company's identity. When you master this predictive system, you're no longer just a passive collector of subscription fees. You become an active guardian of your customers' success within your ecosystem. You're proactively making sure they get the value they signed up for. And in turn, that makes your tool completely indispensable. So this brings us to the final core insight. When you combine this deep understanding of human psychology with the incredible power of automation and real-time data, you don't just reduce churn. You fundamentally change your relationship with your customers, and really with the very idea of churn itself. And this is the ultimate takeaway. This system isn't just about making a negative number on a spreadsheet go down. It's about building a more resilient, more durable, and more customer-centric business. Companies that master predictive retention don't just have short-term growth. They build an enduring foundation of customer loyalty and deep engagement that can get them through any economic storm. They move from simply growing to truly enduring. In the end, this really represents a whole new philosophy of business. We have to stop thinking in terms of those old-school funnels that just aggressively push people towards a purchase. Instead, we have to create intelligent systems that are constantly and proactively pulling them toward the value they were looking for in the first place. And when you do that, you never really have to worry about them leaving, because you've become an essential, trusted partner in their ongoing success.